Hello, welcome to another edition of the Low-Code Campfire. This is episode number 113 for September 1st, 2023. It's another Open Lines Friday, and I suspect a low attendance day given that we're right before Labor Day in the United States. This is an event we do every Friday, though, 10 a.m. Central Time, and we get together, talk about Plant an App in general, low-code techniques, challenges, experiences, and this is just an all skill levels welcome event where you can talk about the things that you've got going on, your projects, and we often see ideas come from this group that help your fellow low-coders. These are recorded. We put them out on YouTube. So that's youtube.com/plantanap. You can go and get those, as well as we recommend that you subscribe. But we have a couple of channels out there, including our Low-Code Cafe series. So great training content. We'll run this introduction. We'll run this agenda today, where we'll do introductions, and then around the campfire, we'll pick from any of these topics. We'll always start with first call, and then we'll see what we get into. And after an hour or so, we drop into the afterglow segment, where we turn off the recording, have a chat. So do engage with us, jump in, show and tell. This is an open meeting format, so just participate. We have two very simple guidelines. If you've got noise going on, please mute. Otherwise, be nice. You can submit questions and topics in advance. We put those in the put a link to that in our emails, but you can also use this QR code to jump and get into those as well. Hello, everyone. Happy almost Labor Day.
Hello, hello.
Good morning, everybody. Or good evening, Bogdan.
Oh my goodness, we have a special guest star.
Hello, hello.
So we drop right into first call. What do we got going on? Somebody don't be shy. I of course have things in my back pocket to talk about, but if you have something, let's jump in.
I'm actually good.
Well,
sorry.
No. Like I say, I got stuff to talk about. I'm going to jump in, see if I can get something started. So I was working on a separate project. I've been tasked with generating some coursework, and we have from our existing YouTube content. And I was trying to find a way to directly consume the YouTube, put the link to YouTube on our website, which is in an iframe, and then, but I also wanted it to start and stop at a particular time. Starting, YouTube is really good about that, but stopping, it just goes on until you hit stop or until it hits the end of the video. So I've done some work to try to get it to start and stop at the right time, and to get to have an adjustable size of the video player. So for what it's worth, I've put that out as a contribution out on the website. It doesn't work yet. I was just doing it in the minutes leading up to this, so I think I'm going to demonstrate this from my development site, and then we'll I'll finish it up and get it working on campfire.plantanap.com. Anybody who's listening to this after the fact and who's not a member of Campfire and wants to be, you can apply. Send an email to me at support@plantanap.com. So, it looks like this, where answer. Can you hear it playing? Save that and see what that looks like. But it accepts parameters of a start time and end time. So these are seconds into the play. The idea of the video that you want to play, the height and width of the player. If you don't provide that, it'll default to a smaller one. And then notice that after it plays, it will drop to a play again button. So it hides and see what that looks like. Which keeps it from displaying the ads that are on YouTube trying to entice you away to other videos. So it hides it, gets it out of the way. And gee, I should probably censor that out because YouTube is going to get me for saying that I'm hiding their ads. But yeah, start, end, and play. So hopefully that'll be of help to somebody along the way.
Pardon me, Dale.
Sir?
Yeah, this is Mark. What technique did you use to stop the ads again?
Actually, it was a fun one, and this whole thing, when you get into it, it was done as a token. So you just drop the on the page itself, and let me demonstrate. Don't play here. We've got. Let me see if I can get this to open. This is just an HTML block, and that I'm putting. I've called it test : YouTube player on my system, but there's very little here that as far as placement. So everything happens in the token, and in test YouTube player. This is just a constant token, but what it does is trigger the video to get playing, and then once the player is playing, it initiates stop video at, and this is every second checking to see whether or not the end time has been achieved, and if it has been achieved, then it hides the thing and resets the timer and things like that. So you can see my JavaScript skills are improving. My asking AI for help skills are improving, depending on how you want to do that. But a little bit of tokens and some JavaScript goes into a player. But pretty brute force.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm missing the point that you made about how you got the ads to stop.
Oh, okay. So when the stop video at executes, I'm hiding the whole block. So the player goes to none, so it's just off, and I've got a replay block that's turned on, and the replay block has a button. So clicking the button gets it to play again and does it all. So they're really not gone, but rather the whole video is being hidden.
Okay. There's a YouTube parameter you can put on the URL that calls the YouTube, and the parameter is $REL = 0. Just adding that on there will tell YouTube to not play the ads.
Yeah.
However, they say in their documentation that it's up to their discretion whether they honor that or not. It's last time I was fooling with this was about a year ago, and they were honoring it every time. I guess they were just sort of reserving the right to not, because that's where they make their money. Makes sense.
Yep.
But I thought I'd add that in.
And I'll go back to this. There may be far better ways to do that. If the depending on the YouTube API, there might be a way to get it to stop. But I wanted these kind of characteristics that it would stop, and that it would allow to play again, going at the same starting and end mark, because my purpose is to have a segment of what we talk about in the Low-Code Cafe, for example, that just demonstrates one particular piece of learning. So it's going to have a defined start time and end time, and I don't want it to roll over into a later time. And if they want to see it again, I don't want them just to be able to click it and and not have to find their place. So this seemed to suit my needs. There may be
Yeah.
better ways.
I like it.
All right. So we'll get this added as a contribution. Just I love being able to go out and find these things after the fact. Let's see. There was yeah, I think we talked about this one last week, the ability to find a workflow from an ID. So that one was already there, but I've been finding this one very handy that that Jim took something that I started and really polished it up. But this helps you find an erroring workflow, and that's certainly been handy. Okay, so that's contributions. All right, does that spark anything with anyone yet? Great, I'll keep going. I wanted to mention a known issue. Patrick and I bumped into this earlier in the week, and we've revalidated that this issue does exist. But for those of you who are using workflows, it would, and I know, and I mentioned this because I heard from one of our other frequent flyers, David, if you has been in this meeting several times, but he had an issue that was essentially the same thing. And when it's one of these, it's really a ghost story, one of these things that you spend too much time trying to figure out. So I'm just going to mention it again. If you have a workflow that you have the input named X and the output named X, you're going to find that you cannot modify X in the middle, and so the output of X will always be the same as the way it came in. And that's just an oddity, but don't name your inputs and outputs the same thing and you won't run into this. This is something that is on our list to fix, but I don't want anyone to waste their time.
Is that something that has changed over time?
I don't think so. This, or at least not in a long time. This bug 3770 was, we're in the 6,000s right now. So this represents, more than a year.
Okay.
I would expect it's always been this way. Okay.
That's good to know. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Okay. All right, that's all I have in my back pocket. So somebody else is going to have to jump in.
Well, speaking of things that are known, I thought I'd mention the single file upload thing that I shared with you, Dale, because that could probably cause some people some frustration at some point. In 1.25, I discovered that when you in a single file upload, when you rename the file, when you tell it to automatically rename the file, and the field token ID that for file ID that you get from the field, if it actually renames the file, it gives you the ID of the file that already had the name of the file you uploaded. That sounds really convoluted, but hopefully it makes sense. So if a file exists on in your directory where you're uploading with the same name as the file that you are uploading, and you are telling it to rename, in those cases, you'll get the ID of the file that already existed. So that's already been entered as a bug to fix.
I'll bet it took a while to figure that out.
It did. Yeah, it was kind of perplexing for a bit there.
Did you say that started in 1.25?
Yeah.
So you're talking about using handle duplicates rename?
Yes, handle duplicates rename. That's correct.
So you're uploading, well, it doesn't matter where you're uploading it to, but the file already exists. So the rename is
yep, and the renamed file gets created. So it's not like that doesn't happen. You do get a new file in the system with with the original file name and appended with a numeric ID. So that happens correctly, but what you don't get is the token that's on the second to last line there. You see, Dale, where it says and the second token in file ID. Yeah, that one there. That token, if you're using
old.
Yeah, it gives you the file ID of the original file that was already existed.
Yep.
So if you're using that to then update a record to associate, then you have the incorrect file associated with your record.
Nuances. Yep.
Yes.
Looks like something that will be easy to fix. It looks like just something that didn't get updated in the after the rename. Cool.
Patrick, I use that field a lot, the single file upload. So I'm very happy that you shared that. Thanks.
Okay, good.
Okay, anyone else with a ghost story? Or what are you working on? And Patrick, while they're thinking about that question, I wonder, I don't see any harm in showing where we're going with the new view you've been working on.
Oh, yeah, that could be fun. Yeah, give me a second here and I'll pull that up.
It's going to take him a second. So if you just joined us, we're in the mood for a topic. Or I can start a question. We are adding some. We're starting to, as I mentioned, I'm working on Academy and adding a course. I'm adding a course based on the work that I've been doing in Cafe, which is how to create a form from scratch. And so that course is going to be out there soon. I think probably most of you who are currently on the call are well beyond that. There's very little you're going to pick up from that. But we do want the Low-Code Cafe content to be relevant. So does anybody have ideas, areas where we would want to dig in and do more and provide coursework or just a cafe on the topic?
Are you looking for ideas that would add on to the topic that you're on of making a new form?
No, this is not necessarily. Although I'll take any of it. It's where do you perceive a need for us to provide more training or more information?
Well, you know, the thing that I know I struggle with, and I'm looking at the faces in the room, I know I'm not alone, is where to find an answer when you're trying to look up something that Plantain App does, a feature that an action stack does. I mean, there's something in a stack, and it's just where to find it. It seems to be pretty difficult sometimes. Other times, not so much. You get lucky.
Where to find what an action does?
Documentation.
Okay.
You know, I know you've got documentation online, but there are times that there's nuances you're looking for, and you want to continue to look something up, even though you found what's out there already in the documentation. You know, there's other sources. You know, where would I find the stuff that's in YouTube, and how can I get to the spot in YouTube where it is? And I know that we had a session on that, and Jim was here, and he put it on. But I think that wasn't complete. There was more to be done.
Yes. So I think when Jim was here, when Jim participated in that. He was talking about knowledge base, and I acknowledge that's an incomplete project. So being able to find those nuggets is out of YouTube is something that I think is currently pretty hard.
One area, Dale, that you might want to consider, if you haven't already, is beefing up. In the case of using SQL for dropdowns, I continually have challenges with that. What works, what doesn't work, what can you use? Just to give you an example. So I had a lookup, something as text, something as value, and then I wanted to append a where clause to it. And the where clause didn't work for whatever reason. So I said, all right, let me just comment that out. Well, the SQL still failed, even though the where clause was commented out. So there's some interesting ways that SQL lookup drop down in a form works, that if it could be perhaps more completely documented, that might be helpful, for example.
So I think that's SQL as a data source. And there is no question that is implemented slightly different than some of our SQL actions that have line parameters and things like that. So I will absolutely take that as a topic to look at and see if we can.
Matt, are you talking about in the context of linking it to another field? Was your where clause based on a link to another field?
Well, in this particular case, yes, but I also have, and that actually may lead, kind of leads to a question. I just briefly looked through the forms that the form sessions that Dale did recently, trying to find out if that was covered. But just in general, if you have, for example, a lookup that doesn't work for whatever reason, let's say it's looking for a session variable that doesn't exist or a cookie that doesn't exist, and that's part of the lookup, it just simply fails. And it will fail even though that, because it apparently runs, that SQL runs essentially, it seems like almost ahead of the form loading, regardless of what else you do. It will fail if it encounters something that, let's say, a variable isn't quite ready yet or something like that. I've had it fail for what appear to be inexplicable reasons, but in fact, it's what appears to be, in some cases, that the variable's not there or something of that ilk. It's just very strange and kind of quirky how it works. It doesn't work the way other fields would. Well, if you're not going to, if the form hasn't been built or whatever, it's okay. It will fail, tell you what the problem is. But when you use SQL as a source, it is seems to be much more finicky.
So I know Ben got a good explanation how the sequence of that works. But before you do that, Ben, I just want to piggyback on what Matt said about where to find the documentation on this nuance. He's found a nuance. I have run up against that too. And we can spend an hour or more just experimenting. Okay, what if I do this? What if I do that? Does it run then? And I think if Matt had figured out that he can't use comments in the SQL data source of dropdown, if he had a place he could just make a little note for the rest of us to see, he would have, I would have, and it would have been a big help. So, back to the concept of documentation, if there were just a place where we could augment it, add notes, add experiences to it, you guys can still vet what we say if you want to make sure it's accurate before it's out there. But while we could add so much, I know I personally would. I'd make notes often. And my 2 cents.
Ben, you still have your hand up.
I had to find the unmute button. My comment was going to be on actually something Mark said about finding alternate resources like YouTube and stuff like that. That's hard to easily find. Just a suggestion, the Plantain app administration page on its persona bar at the top, where when you click on the name of your website, it gives you a drop down. That would be a perfect place to add all those other resources. So, you know, someone could go right now, there's a community forum. Now, if you go up to the name Low-Code, that little arrow pointing down, that drop down, you have the support center, you have community forums. Why not add YouTube channel and any other resources that you guys have, put it in there so that, you know, people don't have to go hunting for it. They could just find it.
Thanks for the suggestion. It's the, I mean, taking them to the channel is a piece of it. Getting them to the thing that they want is the next piece. So.
Well, yeah, but at least
yeah,
you're getting them a good chunk of the way there, so to speak.
No, I agree.
Especially for, you know, I'm thinking also, you know, a lot new users specifically, like they may not even be aware that there's a YouTube channel.
So I'm trying to show off Ben's issue. So first building it out where it works. And so we have that working. And I was just unaware that a comment would make it crazy. So I wanted to.
I don't have any issues.
Hmm?
I figured you meant Matt.
Matt, yeah.
Yep.
Now there's a guy who has issues.
Okay, we'll have to experiment with that one a little bit more because that didn't blow it up.
Yeah, in my case, I was looking for, I was either, I forgot now whether there's a session variable or another field, you know, and even
maybe
though
there was a token inside your
yeah,
comment.
it was token. Yep. Yeah, of course you're not going to make it break, Dale. That was a foregone conclusion.
Like when you take your car to the mechanic.
Yeah, just to
Exactly.
back you up, I know I've run into this too on several occasions.
But where we could say like ID equals get : ID. So this syntax will blow up until you have a good ID. That would be one that is annoying.
That looks familiar.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Okay. Oh, the whole SQL was wrong. Never mind. Let's try user ID. Bad SQL gives bad results. Absolutely. And so this illustrates that you can build bad SQL in this format because get ID is going to return space. So user ID equals space means nothing. And so providing a default.
We're also enclosing it in
In quotes,
in quotes. Yep.
But if you don't know, this is probably not even the one that Matt was encountering, but so there
Patrick,
are definitely
excuse me, enclosing it in quotes in that context, what does that do or mean?
Well, so I mean, we're looking for a numeric value, so it's not required that it be in quotes. But if you put it in quotes, then it'll be looking at a blank value, as opposed to there being a syntax issue because you're saying where the field equals, and you are completely missing your syntax then if you don't. So enclosing into quotes just make sure even if the token doesn't resolve, that you are at least your syntax remains intact.
That one little tidbit right there, Patrick.
Oh, really?
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So this is valid syntax for SQL, right? This is not valid syntax for SQL because it trails off where user ID equals nothing. So by when you do this and get ID resolves to blank, it really looks to SQL like this. And by enclosing it in let's try to help me here with these. By enclosing it this way, when this doesn't resolve, you get this, so it remains good syntax. And then always remembering that you have this ability to provide a default value if it's blank. So some combination of these will keep the SQL from blowing.
And may I add that not adding codes open this to SQL injection as well?
I'm sorry.
So not adding the codes, I think it will open this to SQL injection because whatever you have in the query string will get transposed in the query. So then people could inject stuff in your queries.
If you're doing a GET, yeah.
And then I think we at some stage will remove this ability. Probably will have a checkbox for people that still want to do it, but we'll replace everything with the bind tokens mechanism that's considered very safe.
And absolutely, that is a great point. This is a technique open to that. So you definitely have to think about it. And it points out what I was saying earlier, that we have other our SQL action, for example, presents slightly different. So if you're running a SQL query, this doesn't help you get information into a dropdown, but the bind tokens give you the ability to you can specify the name of the parameter and give it a value like this, and this technique using a bind token. So you're binding the parameter value of 1 or get :ID, for example. Binding it up through using this @ construct. This is safe, but our product is big, complex, and developed over a long period of time. The data source of SQL query doesn't currently support bind tokens, so that would be a great enhancement. It's still what we have to use at the moment, so we're trying to.
Okay, accepting that. Are you also saying follow-up that just by putting this this token in single quotes, that is better for stopping SQL injection?
I think
is that one of the points that's being made here?
Opposite, I think.
Opposite?
Yeah.
It's worse. That this construct by providing a default is going to be harder to do an injection.
Yeah, but that fails sometimes, right? Is that the point? That's also a point being made.
No. If you don't have a value, yeah, you're going to get a SQL error.
Okay, can we do something with create update tokens that we can have the equivalent of
But-
binding?
I think Dale's trying to just clarify though, that he has a default value. So here we're not going to get a blank. We're going to get equals 0.
This will resolve to 0.
Yep.
Resulting in good SQL.
Okay, to clarify, when Bogdan mentioned putting it in quotes, I think opens it up to the potential of an injection, if I understood it correctly. Now, if that's correct, is that in the context of using get, or is that just an across the board when using token values?
Yeah, it's across the board, but when you don't have the codes, right? Because basically, when you have the codes inside tokens, we do escaping the codes, so you are safe. Nobody can escape from being a string. If you don't have a string, even if we let's say escape the codes, people can still escape your query and write a different query. So that's why you always put codes, and I think let's say you are safer than not putting them.
Okay, so I think we might have had that backwards.
We're going back and forth here.
We had some, yep. I was not clear either, so yep, thank you.
Yeah, because whatever comes as a code inside the query string now will double escape it, so people cannot escape being in a string here.
Got it.
Compared to being outside, where they can do some sort of syntax to finish this query and start another one, but delete all from users, I don't know.
Oh, okay. So just for clarity, this syntax that I have up now would be a recommended syntax.
Yes.
Okay, in this example, we're getting something from the query string, which gives a user an opportunity to put something in there. But how many other situations or all situations do we put single quotes around tokens?
Well, I was thinking about that too, Mark, and so like if you were doing this with a link to, while it would be harder for somebody to take advantage of that, a link to another field is what I'm referring to. It would be harder. It would be harder for somebody to take advantage of that, but still, I think within the realm of possibility, if they were to inspect the page and there's probably ways they could still take advantage of it. Am I wrong? Does anybody agree with me on that?
Yes, I think it's safer to always put it because you don't know. I mean, if you know very well where the content came from, if it came from an outside user that you don't implicitly trust, of course, it can be directly like here, getting it from query string or getting it from cookies. Again, would be something that the user can control. But other times, let's say you have a form that submits data in an entry, and then visiting that entry could load that into a query, and that could cause it, right? So usually don't, as a general rule, never trust the user input. And on this side, always put it in codes, unless you have bind tokens available, in which case it's much safer to use that.
So are there any situations where putting single quotes around a token would cause things to fail?
None that I know of, because usually where you don't put it, it's numbers. But numbers, SQL Server is quite good at converting to numbers when based on the context. Okay,
so then this is in the context of using tokens of any kind when interacting with SQL.
Yes.
Okay, because we use tokens for a lot of other things as well, and I'm just trying to create the context in my mind when I need to be including those single quotes. So only when I'm interacting with SQL.
Yes.
And I'm glad that we got that clarification, because I've pretty much made it a practice for many years to put my numeric values in quotes, even though I don't have to. So,
I mean, just on a side note, I mean, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but like for me and what I'm used to doing, in a situation like this where you have the SQL query and we don't have the bind tokens, I never put any tokens directly into the SQL. I write the script with the declares of my variables up top, and I put all of the tokenized items inside variables. So like I'll declare an integer and I'll put the value of whatever the query string is into that integer. If it's going to fail, it's going to fail there. And that's going to prevent SQL injection as well, because if someone tries to inject SQL code, it's going into an integer. SQL's not going to accept that. And then those at variable names, that's what I use in my SQL below. It's kind of like a manual way of doing the bind tokens, because you're not putting the tokenized values directly in your SQL statement. You're putting it in declarative statements above. Right.
Is that the right syntax?
I think INT is what you want for the.
Yeah, it's INT.
Yeah.
In that context, would we be surrounding that with single quotes?
No, because you're declaring it as an integer. So at that point, you don't need to do anything because it's a variable that is of an integer base. And if someone tries to put something into that query string ID that's SQL based, trying to inject, when that ID gets to be put into that at ID, which is an integer based variable, it's going to fail because you're putting characters into it. So it's not going to accept someone doing SQL injection.
So it still works.
Yeah, I would say what Ben said, probably it's a lot better than what I said with the codes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it too. Yeah.
It's just basically a way of manually, I mean, it's a little bit more work, but you're manually enforcing strong typing, basically.
And, I would just add in there that, and I'm sure, Ben, you've done this also, but I mean, I have over the years done some really complex stuff in these drop-down selections for a SQL source for a drop-down. I've put pretty long queries in those before, so in those cases, the declarations are because sometimes you might be using the same value multiple times within your query too. So that's when declarations really come in handy. So I like the idea of making it a general practice that you just do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I do is like general practice is I never use those tokenized values directly in my SQL statement because, like Bogdan was saying, if you just put a token in your select, someone could put some sort of text in there so that it looks like it's other type of SQL code, like where, or 1 equals 1, for example. In which case then if you're putting a where clause that's filtering and you say or 1 equals 1, then it's going to bring back all records. But if you do this declarative, even if you did a string, so like if declare ID was a varchar and you're dumping it in there, even if they put SQL code in there, it's still not going to work as SQL injection because then you'll say where user ID is equal to, and it's treating the variable as a string variable, not as dynamic SQL. And it's just not going to find whatever it is you're looking for because there's extra junk in the variable. So it's still protecting you from SQL injection, even from string-based variables.
And just to play along and try and keep the confusion to a minimum, I just tested this integer declaration with quotes as well. It still supports it. So if you can't remember whether to use or not, and it's still okay to use quotes around it, but the declaration is I think the good technique. So very nice, very useful. Okay, Patrick, do you have?
Can I extend on this question?
Oh yeah.
Are you ready to move on to something else? Because I want to hang here for another second. Okay, so if we step back from the situation a little bit, to the point where if we've not done it right, in here and we get the error message out there on the form, it's that big pinkish screen that makes everything look bad to the user. My question is, can we do something with that? Can we fail more gracefully somehow? Can we like make this section of the form gray or make a little funny message like, oops, we have a mistake here, instead of that pink code filled thing?
Well, keep in mind that you're seeing that.
I was just gonna say that.
So a regular user is not going to see that that ugly message. You get to see it because you need to know what's going on. But when you're not as an admin, you it's still pink and red and ugly, but it's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. I can take it.
But to your point, though, Mark, and going back to kind of what Ben was suggesting, I've done cases or if statements. So essentially trying to trap an error before it happens. So if a value that I need is blank or 0, put up a message, sorry, I can't find that, or something like that. So it doesn't actually fail with any. I'm not a big fan of pink error messages, even though that that incognito only showed 1 line. It's still, to a user, obviously it's uninformative and it's not good. So in my case, I've done some either case statements in SQL or using just if, and that has helped me get around this, where sometimes either the variable isn't there, or it's not ready, or it's coming in a different context or something like that.
Right. Okay. So that would be very useful in situations in which you see recurring issues that you can plan ahead and take care of them before the user gets in that situation. So like if you know this is a possibility it's going to screw up here, you can handle that in advance. I think what I'm trying to get to is when something fails, I would just love to have some kind of default action that Plant and App would do, or my form would do, that would pop up a message saying, something's not working. And with regular English, maybe have a cute little jumping dinosaur icon or something. I don't know what, but just handle it so much more professionally or gracefully than any error message. I would just love to never let the user see an error message. We could tell them, check back later. I mean, or something funny I would do. But
well, that standard message that says to... Go ahead, Ben.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say this would be a good idea, similar to, I was actually, before Bogdan even mentioned it, I was putting in a feature request for the bind tokens on all the SQL query areas to make it the same. But similar idea to the SQL query action that has an on error section. Maybe we can have that as a feature request as well. So here you have your SQL query, and then right underneath you have an on error action stack, so that when it's trying to evaluate the SQL, if it fails, it then goes to the on error action stack, and you can do a display toast message or display error message or something like that, so that it's not just defaulting to some weird message.
I just as you're saying that, I got inspired, and I thought, what if we had a place where in form and or grid settings or anything that's facing like that, if anything fails at initialization, you have a custom error that you can put up, so that so that you don't get the ugly screen. You just, if the module at initialization, if something doesn't work properly for it to fully initialize, you can specify a custom error. I mean that seems like that would be pretty useful as well.
Yes.
We already know, we're already seeing that we're getting this pink error. Or a pink error with no content. So we know that it's an end user, and I'm sorry, I'm going to do it again here as an incognito. We already know that something is errored and we haven't rendered the form. So displaying that end user
I thought right here we should be seeing a message that says something, please contact your administrator or something like that. That's the standard error. I feel like that there should be some text there.
Yeah. I'm used to seeing that as well.
Yeah,
I would love
yeah.
to be able to format that message and put my own graphic in there, my own text, something like that.
Well, the text should be in a resx file somewhere. So I think
That's comforting, but I would like it to be much more accessible.
easier to get to. Yeah, I agree.
Or
Yeah,
maybe even
resx.
customizable per form or per situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I was going to mention. I was going to mention the resx file earlier, but no, I think a setting and for failure to initialize would
Yeah,
be
setting.
would be a nice touch, definitely.
On the surface, doesn't sound like a big ask. So, Patrick, tell you what, why don't you demonstrate what you've got, and I'll write that down for the product team to discuss. Let me drop out here.
So, you know, on those, I'm asking another question here because it's still kind of related. On those tokens, we were able to put a default value on the get token. Can we put a default value on other tokens as well?
Yes.
All tokens?
Generally, yes.
Just equals and then something.
Yep. That's I think there are some. I think there's some exceptions, but generally, yes.
So this is not a ghost story, even though we're looking at an entity called Ghost Towns. I think Manu made this entity, but I wanted to show you the entity first before I show you what we've done. So this entity just simply contains a title and a parent ID and whether or not the parent has children. And so we've created a new view for listings that takes data like that and puts it into a hierarchical, so you can, yep.
It looks great.
And it's got some cool features. So for instance, I can take Dale's town, and Dale, I'm going to move you to Colorado temporarily. So there were some changes overnight, and okay, there we go. It just took a minute, but so now we can see that I moved 40, and this actually happened in the database. I don't have to save anything or anything like that. I actually moved, and this is based on drag and drop actions. So this is utilizing functionality we already have in there, but I was able to recategorize Forney into Colorado. Now let's put Dale back where he belongs, back here in Texas.
What is this object you're showing us? I'm sorry, is it a form field? What is it?
That's a new view in listings. I'll show you the settings in just a second. Yeah. Okay. And so let's say, let's take a look at Maryland here. Let's say I want to add a child to Maryland. So I'm going to go here and add. And so now I have Silver Spring added to Maryland. So it's just a way to do hierarchical views and to manage those. So this would be good for category management, for folder management, that sort of thing. I'm going to click on Expand All just so you can see that we can go down and look at everything we have here. I can collapse the entire thing. We can do root buttons. So if I wanted to take, oops, do that. Sorry. Let's say I wanted to take Europe, and I'm going to select Europe and then click on the promote to first level. Say, sure, I want to do that. And so now Europe is up at the same level as the solar system, but of course that's not correct. So let's move Europe back where it belongs. And that was in the EMEA plus Africa section. So I'm going to take, or no, it was down here, wasn't it? Yeah, okay, so I'm going to take Europe and move it back here. Now Europe's back where it belongs. So let's take a look at the settings here. So let me go in and I'll look at the, so there's under views, there's the new hierarchy experimental view. If we look at the settings here, this is where you specify. So you can pull in your, the fields you pull in can be anything you want to, but you just need to specify which is the ID field, which is the title field, the parent ID, and the has children property. So the title is important because that's what it actually gets displayed in the hierarchy view. And of course, the parent ID is important so that we show the children in the correct place in the hierarchy view. And has children determines whether or not you have a plus symbol next to the item. So you can see that it has children. And then there's an on item click JavaScript. So when you click a row, you can run a JavaScript and you have access to the ID of the row that you're clicking on by getting item.id. So we're also going to be adding here another JavaScript for when you select an item, so that you can have something happen automatically when you make a selection. Yeah. Any questions? This is, I mean, this is actually a pretty exciting thing. I don't know if you guys are seeing it or not, but it's
No, I think it's
gonna be cool.
very good. Yeah,
I like it a lot. That's really cool.
wicked awesome.
So I've built that functionality into a grid, and the
Mhm.
piece that I had that I would ask that would be in this one would be to turn off the checkbox. You have a checkbox there, and I don't see it here in these settings.
Oh,
'Cause I-
so make the checkbox optional. And so
Right.
yeah, this will probably grow. We are working with some you know, trying to get minimal stuff in place for a specific client actually. But I think that's a good that could be a good addition as to whether or not to display the checkbox. Sure.
Right, and then in my implementation, the on item click refreshes other grids on the page and other controls. So that
Mhm. That's the idea for using
Yeah.
this. Yeah, is
And
to do.
And I did that by calling a row button or a grid button at the top.
Yeah.
To refresh.
Well, here
everything.
the idea here is that we could use the DNSF functions. So DNSF init form. I forget what it's called, but yeah, that So we'll initialize a form based on by passing the ID parameter to that form. That's what we're going to. That's actually the very specific use case of why this is here that we're going to use it for. And then under settings, that drag and drop functionality that you saw me using, very straightforward. We are just updating the parent of the moved item to make sure that it has the oh wait, no, here we are. No, here we're actually updating the item. I don't know. Oh yeah, update parent views. Right, yes. So we're updating the item that's moved. We're specifying the new parent, and there's a new token available here in drag and drop actions. So you see specifically we added a help text here for hierarchy view. The future. So that's the new parent where the item was moved to. It's under a token called future. And then this one here is just updating that parent to make sure that it has the has children property. Ideally, we probably would put a condition here to say, does the parent have has children already? If not, then update it, but not crucial. This is just ensuring that the parent does have the has children property as true. So that's pretty easy for the drag and drop action there. Any other thoughts? We are at time now, so I will stop sharing.
The other option that I had to add to mine for the client I built it for was in the grid in the listing at the bottom was they navigated so far down into the tree, they wanted a jump back to the top function. So because they were just getting lost in navigation.
Yeah,
Couple of thoughts I would add to maybe some kind of flag that would render some of those children items probably that would be unclickable or undraggable by users or by some users. Another one would be
Wow.
the unique formatting depending on level or depending on parent. So because sometimes, you know, your data is cognitively compartmentalized, you know, like division A is always red and division B is always B, that kind of thing. And so if you can format the items like that, that gives us more flexibility to make it match what the customer wants.
Cool. Good
Traditional
ideas.
formatting.
Yeah.
Good. All right, we'll call it there. You're welcome to hang around for Afterglow for a few minutes, but we finally dragged it out of you and got a conversation going. I'm always smarter at the end of one of these hours, so thanks for joining. We will see you guys next week, and there's a possibility that I could be broadcasting from a surprise location next week, so tune in and see where that is.
All right.
Okay. Very good. See you guys next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks.